Howdy, howdy, and welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. Today, it's all about how to get client ID to show up in your Google Analytics. And this is a beyond basics. So we're going to assume you've got a little bit of skills when it comes to Tag Manager and Google Analytics. And we'll be showing you a few tips and tricks along the way. Now, before we go too further, if this is your first Workshop Wednesday, welcome. My name is Chris Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io. Our content's featured on platforms like Digital Marketer, CXL Institute, Social Media Examiner, and of course, all of the different courses and resources that we have over at measurementmarketing.io. Now, our main job is to help people like you figure out how to use all these cool tools so that you know your numbers and ultimately so you can grow those numbers. And we do that with a framework. Now, this is the framework. It's really 5 pieces: planning, building, reporting, forecasting, and optimizing. And when it comes to client ID, that is the cookie. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute or so here. But the idea that Google Analytics is recording and cookieing all the different users that are out there, that sometimes can be useful in reporting. So it will affect your build. It will be able to allow you to answer certain questions that you wouldn't be able to answer and makes it better planning and everything else. So it kind of really touches, I think, planning, building, and reporting the most out of these. Now, with all these workshops, of course, just pick up one new idea, one new concept, one new thing, especially if you're just starting out. Because remember, this is a beyond basics. Every week we rotate for a different category. This one is just for those more advanced users that are out there. So if you are just starting out and it gets kind of like overwhelming, you're not quite sure what all these different things are, that's okay. Just know it's possible, and you can come back and watch it later when it's a good time for you. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get underway. Beyond basics, how to get client ID to show up in Google Analytics. Now, we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to pull up. Initially, we're going to start here with our site. I want to show you kind of what we're talking about. So what's happening in our site is we are actually grabbing the client ID, and I'm going to show you the specifics of how we do it in a second, but I want to show you kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about this number right here. This is the client ID. This is how Google Analytics works. When a new user comes to your site, Google Analytics is going to create a client ID, and it cookies the browser window, it cookies the browser, and that's how it knows a user. Right? It sees that client ID, goes, cool, that's a user. That's how it defines users according to Google Analytics. Then if you come back to the site later, or if a user comes back to your site later, if they already have that cookie, it goes, oh, it's a returning user. And so it's an identification, right? It's an anonymized identification. And that's all that this is. Now, where would you use this? Well, first, getting it into Google Analytics, let's talk about that. It technically is already a part of Google Analytics, but only in your audience, it goes to User Explorer. And in the User Explorer report, you will see client ID. It'll actually, again, this is Google Analytics version of a user. So here you've got, this User Explorer that you can see all the different client IDs coming through. And remember, these are not people. They are users as Google Analytics defines them. So some of these could be the same person just on different devices or different browsers. And that's kind of the good and bad thing about Client ID. It's good because it does give a way to sort of say like, okay, here's a user and we're going to keep them separate. But it's bad because it's easily falsified. And falsified is the wrong word. It's not the most accurate picture. That would be something like user ID tracking. You would want to set that up on your own. Now, we have some of that set up for ours. So I'm going to show you kind of the difference between like a client ID and then the user ID and why they're different. So I have created a custom report. So I'm going to go into that. We have a little user ID report. And this is for some of our logged in users. We'll have user IDs. So these are anonymized identifiers that we actually take from our CRM and we put them into Google Analytics. So now we can see all the different users that are coming to our site, how many times they visited. I could build reports broken down by users, which is awesome. But watch what happens here. Now, the way I built this report is this actually drills down into the client ID. So for this user. So this is the user ID. This is the ID number in our CRM. And again, I have no idea who this is right now, but I could go into our CRM, look up this person and be like, okay, great. Here's what they did. But in this case, I grab this number, I click into it, and then I see client IDs. Well, this is what's interesting to me is Google Analytics has 2 different client IDs for this user. And that's the drawback of the client ID. And this is why you want to see client ID. Now notice, this is client ID with a capital ID. I did this, and I'll show you how to set this up in a second. I did this so I could tell the difference between our client ID coming into Google Analytics. This is the one that we've customized versus the other client ID that is in the User Explorer report. Because you'll see that is the more traditional client ID with a lower d. So just a little FYI, it's not the same thing. We didn't pull this same number. That's why it's a lowercase d here, if you'll notice. So again, going back to our custom report, I had my user ID, I've got my client IDs here. Well, then I can start to, slice and dice and say, well, was it, a different landing page that they saw? And we can start bringing in custom dimensions and I can see what's splitting them out. This looks like it was both the homepage in this case. Maybe it was a different device type that was coming in. So this would be device category. And I would see desktop or mobile, both desktop, but even more kind of unusual. Actually, most people are using the same desktop computer, but in this case, it's two different ones. So, or not two different desktops, but two different browser windows. So one could have been the regular computer they're using. One could have been an incognito version, could have been two different browsers on the same computer, but they had the same ID, the same user ID. Now, that's why we like setting up user ID personally, because it helps you get a more stitched together version of users, and it overrides the traditional client ID, or like gives you a super level to be able to track to a user, right? A more useful truth is kind of what we're looking back here for. So this is why I want to see client ID. It's not because I use this number for anything in particular. It's so I can see these breakdowns and really have an understanding. Now, if I go back to some of these other users, and I'll sort of pick randomly here, I'll do the same thing. So we click through, we see this is just one user, one client ID. This is great, right? It's kind of what you would want. I'm going to pull up a little larger data set here, and let's see if we have anybody with a lot of returning views, because those are the ones that are going to be over and over. So we see number of user counts with this user ID. So we click through here and see 3 different client IDs. Now, again, let's see if there's different device categories. There may or may not be. This would be the desktop. These are all 2 desktops, 1 mobile. So this was the person on a mobile device. These were the 2 different browsers on the desktop device. So it could have been one at work, one at home, or their laptop and their desktop. And then here's the mobile device coming through. So all 3 client IDs associated with the same user ID. Now remember, this workshop is not about user ID tracking. We have other workshops in there. If you're a Win Monthly Pass member, we have that available to you in Win Google Analytics Beyond Basics, it's Win Google Analytics Advanced Customization. And then if you're an Academy member, just search in the workshops library for user ID tracking. You'll see all sorts of stuff around that. But the client ID is really interesting, because being able to have this and see this sort of level and go, oh, okay, so not, because really, in a lot of the reports, when it talks about users, it's 1, 2, 3 users. See, it says 3 users, but it's not really 3 individual people. It's really one person, because our user ID report is saying, yeah, this is really the same user. It's one person here. And that's why this client ID, being able to record it and be able to see that and be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to take my analytics with a little bit of grain of salt, but I get a more, better understanding of how it's working and how it's recording, because I can see more information there. So that's why we set this up and sort of how we use it, right? To be able to slice and dice a little bit more and kind of get an understanding of the difference between Google Analytics sort of definition of users and user ID, which for us is a more useful definition there. And we need client ID to do that. So how do you actually get this in? Well, I'm going to show you kind of a tale of 2 tag managers. We have our main site and we've got the demo site. So I'm going to go into our main site, and how we set this up, and it's very simple. I'm just going to look for CJ here for custom JavaScript. And then we can see here client ID. So if I click in here, this is just a custom JavaScript variable. And that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this out. Again, if you are a member of measurementmarketing.io, or if you have any of our free resources, you've got access to the toolbox. Again, that's free to open up if anybody wants to do that. But in the toolbox, you'll see a JavaScript guide, and it's got all these little custom JavaScript templates available to you, so you can copy them out. So I'm just going to copy this, and that's it. This is what does the work. So it goes in and it finds the cookie name called _GA. Now, why does it do that? I'm going to use our little Chrome Dev Tools here and show you exactly where this is. So if we go to Application, we go to Cookies, and I go to measurementmarketing.io, you see all the different cookies that are available to us. I'll bring this over a little bit. So if we go down here, this little _GA, you can see there's a tag manager cookie that was set. Well, here's the Google Analytics cookie that was set on the measurementmarketing.io domain. You can see that right there. And it's little _GA. And contained within this is our client ID. So this is kind of what we're looking for. So what this script basically does is it goes into that cookie, finds it, and then it grabs the part that we need, the actual client ID, those 2 numbers on either side, and then it returns back with the value. That's it. That's all it does. So it's pretty simple script to get up and running. So and that's all you would need to do is just literally copy this, and you would paste this in. So that's what I'm going to do on this other side. Now, we do not have the client ID on our demo site. So I'm going to refresh our little preview here, get our preview started, I should say. And now I'm going to come into our demo site, and I'm going to set up the preview here. I'm just going to refresh it so you can see that it does not yet exist. And we're going to set it up on our demo site, just to kind of give you an example. So if I come into any of these variables, you see there's no CJ variable, because that's how I'm going to name it. There's no client ID that's actually in here, right? So we don't have that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into Google Tag Manager, and then I'm going to go through and we are going to go into variables, and we're going to do a new user-defined variable. In this case, a custom JavaScript. So we're going to go to custom JavaScript right here and literally just pasting in what we had before. That's it. I'm going to name it CJ. And then what is it returning back with? It's returning back with client ID. So that's what I'm going to call it. So CJ client ID, click on save. Now we're going to refresh again. And then here we should be able to refresh again. And with any luck, we're going to come through here, take a look at our page view, go to the variables. There's CJ client ID and the actual client ID. So there we go. So now I've got my client ID set up. Excellent. But it is still not being sent into Google Analytics from this. Now this is a whole separate site that we've created, so whole different analytics. So it's not being sent into Google Analytics. So how do I get it sent into Google Analytics? That is the power of the gas variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just look for our Google Analytics settings variable. It's what we call it, gas, Google Analytics settings. So we're going to click into that. And all we need to do to make the client ID available, let's bring that back up. One more time. Oh, looks like it's glitching. This is why we love doing these live. Let's try it one more time here. I'm just going to refresh this screen. You know what I'm going to do is also leave preview mode here. Clean us up a little bit. Poor tag managers getting confused. Why do you have two tag manager containers open at the same time? All right, so there's our main one. We just did a little refresh. I'm going to come into variables, and we're going to look for our gas variables. This is our Google Analytics settings variable. We're going to click on where it says gas. That should pull up our variable. There we go. So now, where are we sending this through? We've created the variable itself, which is this CJ client ID, and all we did was pass it through as a custom dimension. That's it. So how do you do that? So I'm going to pull up Google Analytics, and I'm going to show you where that is. So in ours, and I'll do two. I'm going to do the demo account in just a second, but just to show you. So we're in our main account for Google Analytics. We come down to custom definitions. You go to custom dimensions because it's the dimension you're passing through, client ID. And that's why it says capital D there, because that's why it shows up like that. If I made it a lowercase d here, and if I ever wanted to change it, I could. I can come in here and just change it to that. But I don't want to confuse it with the one that's already in GA. So that's why I did this. And then we associate that client ID to the session, to the visit. That's kind of the scope we want to do. So I'm going to show you how to create that in our demo site, which we have not yet created it there. So we go to our demo account. And then in our demo account, and I'm just going to come down to custom dimensions, and we're going to create a, let's see if we have one already. We don't, so let's go ahead and create one. So we're going to say client ID, and I'm also going to make that session based. We click on create, and that's it. We click on done. Nothing else to do except note this number right here, our index number. So this is our index number 8 that we're doing. Cancel back out. So there you go. Index number 8 is what we want here. So we just need to know the slot number that it's going to be sent to. And I'm going to just verify we are sending it to the right analytics account. So this is -4. Perfect. So let me go back into our tag manager. This is our demo account tag manager now. So now we've got our client ID. Now I need to get to our gas variable, which is right here. So we're going to go here. It's going to the right account number, which is great. Now I'm going to click into this gas variable. I'm going to click where it says more settings. And then I can see custom dimensions, and it says, great, what custom dimensions should I do? Well, index number is the slot number, so 8. All I'm doing is I'm matching to what Analytics told me to do. Oops, let's go back. Custom dimensions. You see it says index number 8 right here. That's how I got that. So then I say index number 8, and then what value do I pass through? Simple, CJ client ID. That variable that I just created, and I trust but verified. I TBV'd it. I checked this, and I said, oh yeah, it's actually reporting. I always do that first, do it a step at a time. So if this part didn't work, I wouldn't want to set up the custom dimension yet. And that's why we don't set up everything all at the same time, because again, sometimes it's just too much too soon. It's tough to debug things when you do 27 different things at the same time. So that's why we're doing just that. But again, that worked just fine. So now with this setup, it should automatically pass through as a custom dimension. So we're going to click on save. And now how do we TBV this? So I'm going to do a not to confuse tag manager because I've got too many tag managers running in the browser. I'm going to turn off preview mode here. We're going to turn on preview mode here. And now we're going to refresh this screen again. And now what we should see is that custom dimension is actually starting to fire through. Now I'm going to pull up any of these Google Analytics tags because they should have had it. So if I come down here, I'm going to looking for a custom dimension. You can see this right in here. So I just clicked in the tag. It says custom dimension, and it passed through the value of the custom dimension. So you can see that. Now, what's kind of cool about this is, let's see on this page view, did it know at this point in time, did this variable know the client ID? It did, which means that the page view, theoretically, this page view should have been sent with the variable information, and it was. But if for whatever reason it wasn't, like let's say maybe you delay or the custom variable doesn't resolve and doesn't have the client ID until DOM ready, for some reason, just pretend that happened. If the page view got sent without that dimension, but there was another analytics event, like in our case, scroll happens, right? These little scroll events that come through. Any other Google Analytics hit that comes across would have that. And because it's session-based, then it would retro back and also cover the hits that didn't have it. So that's what's kind of cool about setting up as a session-based, because it covers all the hits in that session. Even if it's the last hit at the end of the session, as long as it contains that information, it gets retroed back to everything. Kind of the beauty of custom dimensions. So that's really it. At that point, all we need to do is just publish our container, and then we're off to the races. And then we've got our Google Analytics custom dimension coming through. And then again, how do I build a report from it? I can go, I'll go back into Analytics. So if I come back into, this is our, make sure we're in our right demo account. So I would come down and then I could build a custom report. Now I'm going to show you, this is not going to be something you can actually see yet because it literally was just set up. I'm just going to go into one of our traffic reports here and just to show you how you would find it, or that you could technically find it. So you can see here, all you need to do is type in client and it starts pulling it up. It's under custom dimensions already, client ID. So I already have that sitting there. So this is what I created as client ID. And what I'm actually going to do, because I told you 3 times on this training, I was not going to do that and I still did it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change the name to capital ID because I want to make sure that I know it's separate from the other one. So there's client ID right there. Now, again, the difference between these, I'm going to go to my audience reports. I'm going to go into the user explorer. These are the built-in client ID that Analytics is picking up on its own. So you're kind of not doing something that is completely new. Analytics does have this information. It's just that it doesn't make this information available to the other reports. And sometimes you want a custom report to be able to drill down for some reasons, right? So client ID is available here, which is great, but that's it. And if I want it available in, let's say, technology report, and I'm going to go to Browser and OS as an example. Actually, let's do this. Oh, that's fine. We'll keep it here. If I wanted to see it here, I couldn't because there was no way to get it. So this one is the capital D. This is mine. And so now I can do a breakdown, say, well, show me the Chrome and then all the different client IDs associated with Chrome. So that would pull through if that was something I was trying to answer. So just a way to get some interesting information that's already available to you in Google Analytics, just more globally available now within Google Analytics. That's using client ID. It's a combination of setting up the custom JavaScript variable, which again just looks like this. It's a copy and paste. It's really simple. And then now that you've got the variable that pulls its value at that point, then you just send it into Google Analytics as a custom dimension, again, using Google Tag Manager and the gas variable. And if you think about it, it's all we did, just 2 variables that we changed. 1, creating the custom JavaScript variable. 2, adjusting our Google Analytics settings variable to pass it through this value of that custom JavaScript variable as a custom dimension. And that's it. We didn't do any tags. We didn't do any triggers. Everything else just stayed the same, purely variables. And that's pretty cool. That's what I like about Tag Manager. You can get a lot done with just a little bit of effort and some know-how. So with that, we'll go ahead and bring this one to a close. Hopefully you got at least one new thing. Maybe it's the idea of client IDs just being a thing, and that's how Google Analytics records users, and you can sort of see that number now in certain reports. Maybe it's the user explorer. Didn't realize that was already in there. Or maybe it's just the idea of, wow, I can see if I am doing user ID tracking to really demonstrate to my clients or to my stakeholders or to my boss, like, hey, just because it says 1 million users doesn't really mean it's 1 million people. It means it's 1 million cookies, right? 1 million client IDs. And if we do user tracking, user ID tracking, then we can show, okay, we're going to measure by user ID. Those client IDs can filter into the user IDs. And you might see that, hey, for every 1 real user, you have maybe 1.7 client IDs or something like that. Like that might be something you can figure out and help you get a little more useful truth for some answers that you're looking for. With that, now, if you are interested in courses, learning more about this stuff, we have all sorts of things. I've already talked about Win Google Analytics Advanced Customization. We've got Win Google Tag Manager Beyond Basics. A lot of those things cover the more advanced features that we're talking about. But Win courses. So measure.tips/courses. It'll take you to our page. We've got Kickstarter kits. We've got a monthly pass where you can kind of get them all. Keep them for as long as you want to be an active member. And there's plenty of support. It's kind of our claim to fame. So you can go back into our Ask an Instructor support system, send over videos and screenshots of what's going on and where your setups are. And our instructors will send back videos and screenshots as well and help you out. It's like having a consultant on call. So take advantage of that. Measure.tips/courses. Now, if you're an Academy member, or I should say, if you're a company, I would say investigate the Academy. If you really want to have a measurement culture, the Academy is a great soft place to get that because it's got 4 different logins, so everybody can have their own little login. Sometimes maybe you're on the strategy side of things and you're not on the implementation side of things. Other times it's the opposite. You are the implementer, but you're not the strategist. And so those roles have different questions, which is why we create 4 different accounts. Each account has access to everything back there, including all of the different Win courses that we have, both now and the ones in the future, even the ones that get updated. You have access to everything. Plus, you get another 200 some odd workshops that are back there, like user ID measurement, so you can set up user IDs. And then there's also office hours. That's a part for Academy. So it's every Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a little office hours Q&A. So, we can jump on calls with instructors. And so you could be sitting there and jump on Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, get on the call with instructors, with other measurement marketers that are going through some stuff, see people's dashboards, talk through some issues, and really get some help and level up everything. So again, it's a really, really great opportunity. Lots of coaching and support available to you in the Academy as well. And where to find more about that is measure.tips/start. All right. If you are an Academy member, looking forward to office hours. And with that, we will start to wrap this up. Now, next week's topic is a strategy session. So we rotate categories each week. Last week, we actually did a getting started one for our beginners. This week's a little bit more advanced with Beyond Basics. Next week, it goes to people who are more in the strategy side of things and not so much in the implementation side of things. And the implementers have actually asked us to create this one because there are a lot of people out there that really want accuracy. They want Google Analytics to be accurate. And I will tell you, here's the kicker. It's never accurate, but that doesn't matter unless it does. And then that's what we're going to talk about next week. So we're going to talk about why accuracy doesn't matter and why it does, and how to know the difference between the two, and how to get around all this stuff, especially with what's going on with all the different browsers and cookies and adjustments and tech. So we will figure this out together. It will be next week's topic for Workshop Wednesday, a strategy session on accuracy. Now, if you are not yet a part of Workshop Wednesday, please become a part of Workshop Wednesday. Every week we do these different workshops. They are available for the entire week, and then they are replaced out with the next one. So you have access to all of them. Measure.tips/WW. It is free to join that. Our way of giving back, so feel free to take a gander at that. Now, if some of these workshops we do make public, and a lot of them we don't. Most of them we don't. So Workshop Wednesday, we make them all public for you. So you have access to all of them. Again, if you don't care about that week's topic, don't worry about it. We send you an email, says here's the topic. If you want it, great. If not, that's fine too. Wait till the next week. So that's it. Workshop Wednesday, measure.tips/WW to learn more about Workshop Wednesday. And that brings this one officially to a close. You just watched Beyond Basics, how to get client ID to show up in Google Analytics. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.